And this morning, I want to continue a conversation. We'll have a conversation around COVID-19 and insurance, because a lot of people have insurance policies and they're wondering, how does COVID-19 play a role in that? Is it affected by it at all? And this morning, I want to welcome the president of Guardian Life of the Caribbean, Mr. Anand Pascal, to chat about it. Good morning to you, Mr. Pascal.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Remy.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you? How are you?
So far, so good. I'm curious, though. Tell me something. How did COVID-19 fall into existing insurance coverage?
Well, that's a very good question. I think COVID-19 falls into almost every existing insurance policy, because if you think about it, most of our policies were issued long before COVID-19 even became a thought. And so there's no exclusion coverage on particularly life, health, and pension products for COVID-19. So since the arrival of COVID-19, any ailments created or from COVID-19 are covered by almost all life insurance products.
What about the health insurance policies? In terms of things like getting tested, terms of, if you can't work due to illness and that kind of thing, is that covered under the health insurance part of things?
Oh, yes. So, yes, when you have the general concept, it relates to medical necessity. So once there's a medical necessity, so say you have symptoms and your doctor says they suspect you may have COVID-19 and they recommend you or refer you for a test, that is covered under your insurance policy, your health insurance policy. If, for example, though you want to travel and where you're going requires a COVID-19 test, that is not necessarily a medical necessity, or so therefore that will not be covered.
So if for example, somebody at work where you work tests positive for COVID-19 and you may possibly be a primary contact, that means you have to go get tested now. Is that something that would be covered?
Okay, so under the protocols of the COVID-19, I don't think a test is mandatory at the moment that you are a primary contact of someone. So if you develop symptoms, so there'll be the isolation, you'll have to quarantine. If you develop symptoms and then based on those symptoms you go for a test, yes, that would be covered by your health insurance policy. But just simply saying, well, I know someone who has had COVID, or I've been in contact with somebody who's tested positive, I want to have a test. If you have no symptoms and no one recommends that you have the test done, then it won't be covered.
All right, just now you mentioned travel. And I'm curious as to if I were to say, yes, I got the test paid for through my health insurance. Oh, you said no, it's not covered, right?
Right, if you're going for travel.
Right.
Right.
So I pay for my own test or whatever, and I go abroad and I contract COVID by accident or however it happens. And I fall ill while I'm there. Is that something that would be covered?
Oh, well, definitely. So your health insurance plan, and most health insurance plans, and what I would certainly say at this point to people who have health insurance is make sure and understand your contract. If you contract COVID-19 or any illness while abroad and have to be hospitalized, say, abroad, and incur charges based on that hospitalization, your health insurance plan will cover those charges because you've fallen ill and it meets the criteria for your insurance product. What you have to be aware of, though, are the benefits under your plan. So, for example, if your plan is what we consider to be a local plan, so which is for within Trinidad and Tobago doctors, pharmacies, etc., your benefits on that plan will be denominated in TT dollars and maybe a certain limit, whereas the costs incurred in international institution might be a lot higher.
Right.
So the amount you would recover would maybe lower. There are some plans that are specifically designed for international travel and would therefore have different or higher benefits possibly. So it's very, very important at that point to understand what your plan does cover. But if you do contract COVID-19 or any other illness abroad and are hospitalized, that would be covered under your insurance plan.
All right. Now I want to shift it a little bit. We've been talking about the health aspect of it and the health insurance part of it. I want to talk about the business insurance aspect of it, because a lot of people, their businesses have been closed for some time. We could call that interruption of work due to the pandemic, and I believe interruption of work is somewhat covered under the insurance for businesses.
Yeah. Well, you're stepping a little bit outside my boundaries. So Guardian Life of the Caribbean, we handle life, health, and pensions.
Okay.
Our sister company, Guardian General, they do the business interruption type of insurance. So I can't say specifically I have a handle on all of the details within those types of products, but there is some possibility that business interruption from a COVID-19 perspective may not be covered under those types of policies. But again, it really boils down to understanding what is it within your contract and how those benefits work, and speaking to your insurance company or your agent or your broker in that instance in terms of what are the benefits under these policies.
All right, fantastic. Well, let me step back into your realm of life, health, and pension. Regarding the life part of things, if someone is to pass away from COVID-19, that would be covered?
Oh, most definitely. In that unfortunate situation, a life policy covers the risk of death, or a life policy covers the risk of death. And if a family member has passed from COVID-19, there is no exclusion in any current or past policy that excludes COVID-19 from your benefits. So therefore, that claim will be honored.
Okay, and that would also include any other thing related to COVID. So let's say, God forbid, vaccinations or anything like that were to go awry, all that stuff is still covered under your health and your life insurance, yes? Yes,
definitely. Your vaccination or getting a vaccine does not impact your insurance status in any form. There are any number of vaccines already available that are all part of the process, and it does not change your insurance status.
Mr. Pascal, has anything changed in terms of what is required to get your insurance and to get that coverage in the last year and a half since the pandemic has hit? If I didn't have life insurance or I didn't have health insurance before and I wanted to get it in 2020, 2021, has anything changed as compared to somebody who would have gotten it in 2018 or 2015?
Well, that's an excellent question. There have been some slight changes, but only in terms of understanding your exposure to COVID-19. So if you currently have COVID-19 or have had a contact with someone who is COVID-19 positive while applying for life insurance, there are some questions we will ask, and there may be just a pause while you get over that period in time, because just like any other illness, so if, for example, you were applying for life insurance while you knew you had a heart condition, we would have to ask specific questions around that. Because insurance, the concept of insurance is about pooling risk, and we need to understand your current state of health. But other than that, if you have had no exposures and applying for life insurance today, there would be no issue with proceeding with getting life insurance, subject to the normal underwriting process,
right?
To understand your overall current state of health.
And certain professions they've always been fairly high risk, right? Thinking about frontline workers, the healthcare workers, they've generally been, there's a fairly high risk job in general, and now in the pandemic it's increased. So would their rates have gone up, or their process is different, or is it the same, like you're saying, it's just a matter of if you're working close with it or not? Mr. Pascal? Mr. Pascal, I'm not hearing you. I think you muted your mic by accident.
You were asking if frontline workers were at any increased risk. Right. Sorry, you just came back in.
Yeah.
If I understand the question, you're asking if frontline workers were at any increased risk and if we've changed anything about our policies.
Yeah, with regards to frontline workers, yeah.
So just to give a context, internationally, the rate of infection of COVID, and particularly rate of mortality with COVID-19, is about approximately 1% of people who contract COVID will ultimately or could potentially pass from COVID based on the stats. And in the insurance, life insurance world, that has not caused across the globe any change in rates for life insurance. So therefore, there's been minimal, I haven't seen any changes from our international reinsurers and within the local market in rates due to COVID-19. And as you quite rightly pointed out, frontline workers have been at the front line in treating multiple ailments over the years. So they were always at increased risks of exposure, and that hasn't changed because of COVID-19. And I know they've implemented proper protocols within the healthcare system, protective equipment, etc., that helps mitigate those risks. So there's been no changes because of that from a life insurance perspective.
Okay, so the only thing that really changed is the questions that people answer regarding COVID-19, is what you're saying, across the board.
Correct. To really understand what is your current state of health, have you had an exposure,
right?
Those kinds of questions.
And is it that if I were to say yes, I had my cousin friend had COVID, and would I be considered high risk if it's somebody who I interacted with maybe once every month?
Well, your cousin friend was the one that had the exposure, but no, you wouldn't be considered any high risk. What we may ask is, okay, give us some details around that interaction so that we could understand better whether it was, how close the interaction was, and the process may pause for the week or two while you wait to see if symptoms do develop.
Right.
And then after that, then the process will continue as normal.
And the rates will also continue as normal, or would I get a different rate based on that?
Oh no, there's no different rate. The process would continue as normal thereafter. There's no change in rate because of COVID-19, as I was pointing out earlier.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that everybody heard our partner, to make sure that they're clear on that, so that we know that if we see a change in rate, we have a different problem to address, yeah?
Precisely. That's precisely it. Because, as I say, it's all part of the normal underwriting process.
Right.
And people of different states of health, may have, in the Caribbean, in Trinidad as well, we have high rates of non-communicable diseases. So diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, cancer in certain populations. So the underwriting process goes through to determine those elements, and those are actually of much higher preponderance than COVID-19. So when you go through a normal application process, there could possibly be times when there are changes in rates due to the underlying health conditions of the applicant, but there is no change in rate because you've had a COVID-19 exposure or anything like that.
All right, fantastic. I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Pascal. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Oh, it was absolutely my pleasure. You all enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks to you and your viewers.
Take care. That's Anand Pascal, the president of Guardian Life of the Caribbean, telling us that, insurance policy is just basically saying, let me ask you some questions about your COVID-19 status, about the people around you. And if everything good, we go in through like normal. If everything not good, we go wait a little bit longer. If you have no symptoms, then we go in through like normal. And yes, life insurance does cover COVID-19 as well. Let's take a quick break.